Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of Let's Cover Korea before the regular season. It is our 2026 LCK regular season preview event that also has a review of First Stand Tournament, where we're going to give out our report cards for BNK FearX and Gen.G. dGon here alongside Wolf. Nice little break that we had here, Wolf. Not too much happening. Definitely just some tournament that doesn't really matter too much. Gave a little hope to regions that haven't won worlds in a while. That was about it.
I don't know. I find it really interesting, like the tone at which First Stand has always been kind of set out by the fans. It's like if my region isn't winning it, it doesn't matter. If my region is winning it, it matters a lot. And I saw Jat made a video about how he initially was like, yeah, I wasn't really that into First Stand. Like I didn't really like the concept of having a third international tournament because it's just Korea winning again. Is that even good? Does that even like set us up for an exciting MSI when you're just like, oh, okay, I guess they'll win again. But then they didn't win, so it's kind of interesting. I'm like, Jat, I mean, yeah, I get it, but come on. It's a tournament. It's not a tournament. I am not trying to say, by the way, that one way or the other, like it's First Stand, right? Like it's a shorter tournament. It's not as in-depth as MSI or even close to Worlds, right, in terms of participating teams. It is a very short tournament, so there's not a lot of time to adapt or improve throughout the tournament. But I'm not making excuses because straight up, we got wrecked. I mean, we got owned. It was a disaster. And the team that beat us, by the way, 6-0, like it wasn't even close. Like it wasn't even like, oh yeah, it was a bit of an off day, or like, oh, we messed up that one game. Didn't even win the tournament. They didn't even win the whole thing. So we were the third best. We were clearly the third best region at this event. Clearly the third best region, not second, but third. It was like the FPX G2 finals at Worlds back in 2019, right? Like we just weren't there.
No.
Not relevant.
Definitely. We were in a group chat. The LCK boys were in a group chat, and I'll say everyone was a little prickly that night. the Gen.G lost night. Everyone was really prickly is the best way to put it there, as it was a disappointing end to both BNK FearX and Gen.G after Gen.G showed the form that they had showed at LCK and led to the title of our last episode of Let's Cover Korea, where we called it Why Gen.G Might Win Everything for Real This Time. Which I went back and listened to the comments. A lot of you that watched the show called it. And now it's jinxed GG. I won't believe it until they're 2 games up in the World Finals. Well, we couldn't even get past the semifinals in First Stand. Bro just keeps saying that every year, just accept they're going to bomb out in semis, said Zwiger. He was correct. He knew it. We had one person that actually came back and commented after First Stand who said they had a great showing at First Stand, even made it to semis. So people knew. And this is the I Fell For It award that we usually show Ox on on the LCK broadcast anytime he's falling for it for Top Esports or Chronicler when it came to DPlus Kia. This is the I Fell For It, and they did it in a even more disappointing fashion. So that's where we'll start here for First Stand report cards. Let's start with Gen.G, who again, Wolf, started fast. They sped run through whoever they played in the round before. It was like all the matches were in 20 like 5 minutes or less. It was a stomping, a shellacking, which is what they did in the LCK Cup. And then they fall flat against G2 in depressing fashion.
I mean, the thing about Gen.G is it almost felt like they felt that they were invincible, that they could do anything, they could draft in any way, and it just wouldn't matter, which we've seen happen to a lot of teams. Like, it happens to T1 a lot domestically, where they end up losing a bunch of weird games where you're like, I don't understand why you did this. It doesn't make any sense, and everybody knows it's kind of weird. And there are like, it's, with T1 in those domestic games, you're like, okay, this draft doesn't make any sense, but they'll probably still win. It's creative. And then occasionally you get the game where like, Carrie's on Ezreal support, and everyone's kind of like, does this ever work with anyone? And then you just go, okay, well, they cooked too hard. this was not even, it wasn't even like they were cooking with weird picks. Like they were playing standard picks in a draft and bad comps. Like it's not about the draft, it's not about the picks, it's about the composition really more than anything else, which you could call the draft. But like, for example, this game 2 against G2, looking at the draft again, this is the one that made me feel ill, where I was like, okay, what are we doing with this Vayne counterpick into the Cassante with exhaust? So exhaust Vayne, by the way, into like, it's Victor on the other side. You have the Zahin Cassante front line, and you have no front line whatsoever. I mean, you have an Alistair who's ulting, I guess. You know, that's what you got for a front line for your Sivir composition. And you're playing both Sivir, so you're trying to scale, you're trying to wave clear. And also Ari Vi, like Vi Ari. So what's the idea with this composition when you have also a Vayne top to try to just put Broken Blade down? Like the days of pulling the Vayne counter pick out in the top lane, I think are long behind us. And Keen has already showed us, was one of the reasons why he didn't go to first stand last year was, his Vayne top is not as good as maybe it needs to be. And when I saw this draft, that's for me, and I think I even said this in our group chat, or we text each other on basically what's the Korean equivalent of WhatsApp Kakao Talk. I think I wrote like, that's it, it's a 3-0. I don't even need to watch the rest. I think I said, please let it be a 3-0. I don't want to watch any more of these drafts. And I got what I asked for. It just felt, in general, like the reads were just completely all over the place. Now, I want to give SkewMond credit, because SkewMond gapped Canyon in that series. It was incredible. He was, in my mind, easily the best performing player out of the 10 on the Rift in that series, and I think he deserves all the credit. He looked like an LCK jungler. He looked like Peanut out there. Like he actually, stylistically, his early game pathing, his pressure, hitting the exact right ganks at the perfect timing, his counter ganks, everything he was doing was insanely smart. You could see it on his face, like he was really feeling himself. He was into it in the moment. He was having a tournament performance that I felt like when I was watching this, I'm like, when I see that, I think this guy's about to lift a trophy. Now, he didn't ultimately end up winning the tournament, but that was a performance of a lifetime, and Canyon just could not stand up to him.
And that is a great... I feel like Canyon got canyoned, right? Because it wasn't just the outplays, the flashy outplays, generally kind of what we've seen from like Lee Sin Raptor, Pioshik on Lee Sin as well. But it wasn't hands, it was brain. It was right place, right time, and not giving Canyon anything to do, which negated what we saw from LCK Cup Canyon, who was doing that against everybody else. Right place, right time, making reads on where the other jungler would be or not be so that he could get pressure and then force the other jungler into being in a place where Canyon would know. I don't even know if SkewMond knew where Canyon was, because it felt like Canyon never was anywhere. It wasn't anywhere. And then the first time where he felt forced to do something, he gets punished. And so, SkewMond was just so fantastic. And I do think that Canyon would win a Dade type award. We won't say the Dade award. That's retired forever. That's another show. But one where him and Vikla were ones where we're like, I promise, during LCK Cup, they were different. Even though this is what they looked like last year, the last time you probably saw them globally, they were different at LCK Cup. And so Gen.G is tough one to grade, because in their first two tests against JDG and against Lion Gaming, they passed with flying colors. It looked like, why do we even have this tournament? Why are they even here? Just give them the trophy. They are miles ahead of everyone else. Even on their off games, they look on compared to others. That is what, those were true representations. And then we get to this game here, and I think game 1 they drafted arrogantly. Game 2 felt like an opportunity to right some wrongs for the Vayne, and they picked the Vayne. They forced the Vayne in counterpick into that, and then just left that weird comp. And then game 3 they got outplayed. They got outplayed because that game 3 draft, the composition that they have looked like a standard LCK draft that Chovy will be able to function through. Plays will be made on the bottom side of the map with the Nico, and it just felt like, okay, cool. They can do that. However, G2 just ended, or not the Nikos. Yeah, the Nikos. It just felt like G2 showed up better and were clutch. The Kog'Maw there, the Cog Lulu, just being a threat, not necessarily having to do a lot, but being the threat. And then Caps pulling out the Akali on the Azir, on Chovy. It was just disappointing. So for me, I think I would give Gen.G a C minus, right?
Yeah, it's like a
Because
C at best for me as well.
yeah, because as you said in our last episode, this team is focused on Worlds, right? They are focused on Worlds. Everything else is like, okay, yeah, we're gonna win. Yes, we won LCK Cup. That's cool. We've won everything already except for Stand, but we are a Worlds focused team. That's why we stuck together. There aren't very many moves that you can make with the salary cap and the salary rules put in place by LCK to get better players in. So this is what we've got. And they run into yet another team who didn't make moves to build upon the same synergy. They knew themselves well, did G2, and boom. It wasn't a 3-2. It wasn't a 3-1. It was a shellacking 3-0 and a statement for the European champion.
We've all done this in our cast, like on both the play-by-play and the color commentary side, where you'll get a draft like the Game 3 draft between Gen.G and G2, and you sometimes literally say it, or sometimes you kind of imply it when you're like, look, I don't know, this Gen.G draft is a little bit weird, but, they have a strong bottom side, they have these X players, and you're like, okay, I know this draft is, like, scholastically not perfect. Like, we know it's kind of solved that this draft has some big holes in it and has a lot of weaknesses into what the enemy draft is. But it's Gen.G, and you go, well, nameplate's on, though. Will it really matter? Keen's going to get a lead. He's going to have control of the side lane. The Gwen's going to get out of control. They have better macro. They're the best macro in the world. So, the Gwen will help the Yunara become online later, and it just won't matter. But then you look at the other side, and you're like, they've got Lulu to protect the Kog'Maw, and also Caps on the Akali, who can become, like, weirdly enough, kind of this wacky engage tool with Wild Growth. And they have the knockups from SkewMond, and they have the shields from Broken Blade. So anybody on the side of G2 in this draft can go incredibly deep with so much safety, with both the shielding from Lulu, the shielding from Broken Blade on the Shen, and the Wild Growth. So, like, both your Kog'Maw and your Akali are incredibly safe. The Akali is a good matchup into the Azir. The Shen is a matchup that Keen obviously looked a little bit uncomfortable in the top side of the map, and was not able to push the advantage the way he wanted to. And so Gen.G have a draft that, again, is neither a dive comp, nor is it a pick comp, nor is it a strong side laning comp necessarily if they can't team fight, right? And they didn't get the lead for Keen that they needed to have those types of side lane pressures to pull G2 around the map. I think if G2 have to run around the map and G2 and Gen.G rather have that macro lead, this draft can work. But again, it's just, when you look at straight up 5v5, I'm like, what is G2, what can they do wrong? Like, they have TP on Broken Blade, but he has his ult. So he's always going to be able to handle side lanes and join team fights. They have arguably a stronger team fight with the Wild Growth. So it's just a lot of factors here coming down to draft for me, but the performance of SkewMond really was what made it so that Gen.G couldn't just be like, well, we are Gen.G, so it doesn't matter, like, we're going to win anyways. It was, I hate to use the term disrespect, but it's one that, like, I feel like we have to use for LCK all the time. When we saw Hanwha at EWC last year, and T1 at EWC last year, I was like, AL is a good team, by the way. We were watching some of those drafts, we're like, you do not just win this by default, by the way. And then AL almost won the whole thing. And this feels to me like another situation where I'm kind of rolling my eyes at the drafts here. The game 1 draft for Gen.G was fine, right? The Galio, Ashe, Seraphine, they just got outplayed by SkewMond, and the Pantheon was a draft issue that he got his hands onto that, right? But it was his really strong performance. They played well through caps, and Hansam was set up for great success on the Misfortune. That was, I think, of the 3 drafts, like, the closest one. And because it is, a Riot International event, we don't have double elimination. You lose 0-3 here. You don't get to adapt. You don't get to go, oh, I guess we should probably play a little bit more respectfully if we meet them again later on. You're just done, right? You're just out, which, can be frustrating, I think, if you're a Gen.G fan, considering their performances leading up to this moment. Then it's just one and done, you're out. Flying Oyster fans will tell you they feel the same way based on what happened last year, right? So, I think I don't want to. I don't want to say this means that Gen.G are, like, everything we said about them last episode, everything I really was pushing about. This is going to be the year Chovy looks confident. They should win Worlds. That's the goal. That's the focus. I don't think that necessarily is just all washed away by one best-of-3 loss to G2. you know, very far away from home in Brazil where everyone's tired and it's a different environment, but some changes need to be made, right? And I think LCK will give us a good indication of that. And we start talking about the other LCK team that was here, BNK, who, by the way, like played incredibly close against BLG, which made everyone feel like, oh, okay, like if BNK can almost beat BLG, it's done. So like 100%.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. I think the question in the back of everyone's mind is always going to be, between these three teams, what would have happened if T1 made it instead? Like, would they have done better? And we'll never know, but it is a question we have to ask, because what we saw from GenG here was very reminiscent to why T1 lost in the first place with bad drafting. In their best of 5, they dropped to not go here. So it starts to feel like this year, drafting matters a lot. Like, it really, really does matter.
Yeah. And I want to go back to the GenG game 1. The only thing I didn't like about that was that we're using Galio in game 1 for Chovy. I feel like you could have fought fire with fire. They get the Aurora. There are other mages that I think Chovy could have been there that's more playmaker-y. That was my only thing, but getting the hands on the Ash Seraphine, you're expecting more out of Ruler and Duro, and SkewMond just never allowed Canyon any breathing room, and so you're not able to open that up as much. So yeah, going back to BNK FearX, you know, again, grading skill wise, and I think I said this on our show. I just wanted the world to know how great Diablo was. And they did. They got to see it. Double penta Diablo against BLG in a hero moment. Like, everyone got to experience the roller coaster that is Diablo. Good Diablo and bad Diablo in the series against G2 as well. And they also, I feel like people got to see what BNK FearX is. When they're hot and Diablo's playing well and the team's playing around him well, and you're getting anything out of Vikla, they can beat anybody. They can beat anybody. But also, there are just times where Clear forgets how to play the game, and Vikla forgets how to play the game, and then Raptor can't do anything because there's only one lane that played through, and everyone knows what lane that is. So that's also this team.
Raptor also did try to play the game really hard in moments when I think he should have been playing the game a little bit less. He went 0-6 on the Vi.
Yeah.
And was trying to be a hero, trying to be the saving grace for his squad, and it just backfired every time. And so we ended up with a situation where LCK got 6-0'd by one team, right? Like, people are like, EU 6-0'd LCK. I'm like, yeah, well, G2 beat 2 LCK teams, right? Like, that's really what happened. Like, it's not EU. I don't know if any of the other LEC teams would have had the same results if given the opportunity. But like, what does it mean? Do we say, because everyone says, right, like afterwards, oh, my team is the best, like LPL is the best region, G2 is second best region, LCK is the third best region. That was true at first stand in a week-long tournament that has a very short, lead into knockouts, which are single elimination with 4 teams. So, like, yes, maybe your region's representative was better, but does that mean LEC is better than LCK as a whole? I think to insinuate that would be quite silly. But I don't like, I don't think we're ready to say one region is better than the other after this tournament. You know what I mean? Like, I think if you're starting to like go, aha, like this is the year of the LPL, I'm like, well, because like they beat G2, they didn't even beat the LCK teams in knockouts. Like, I don't know what that, like, is that even necessarily the best way to even judge like which region is the best and like what the power level is going to be for MSI? I don't think so. And I think we all can agree that GenG did not play to their best potential. I think G2 did, and I think SkewMond absolutely did, and they got owned. Like, I'm not taking anything away from G2, but I also think that to say that LCK is the third best region right now as a region, right? As a region, not the third best region at first hand, which is factually true, by the way. You could even maybe make an argument they were like, are they worse than third? Like, we'll see. But you can say that about first hand, but I don't think you could say the LCK power level is weaker. When we saw DPlus beat T1, who wasn't there, DPlus wasn't here. And I just don't, we can't we can't quantify all of that information off of this tournament alone. But it was a bad tournament for Gen.G, and for BNK, relatively disappointing tournament as well in their series against G2. That one is a little bit more forgivable, and especially after watching how G2 played against Gen.G, you're like, okay, I feel even less bad about it now. G2 are just super legit, which we kind of knew when we watched that series against BNK, but you really felt it in the series against Gen.G. So Caps had a great tournament. SkewMond popped off. Hansama was a good shout as well. And the Brav, carried hard. Like, they just were firing on all cylinders. They were a real 5-man unit. They showed up. Whereas the Korean squads, when it mattered most, did not.
I feel like we're downplaying how doom and gloom it was when G2 got destroyed by BLG, right? It was 3-0 destruction in the qualification match out of their group. So it did feel more like a reaction Andy surprise, but I would say this G2 squad has been around for such a long time, and Caps has been so synonymous with this team. They are resilient. Whereas Gen.G, they've been around for a long time. Chovy has been the centerpiece of this squad for a while. And there's also a very specific way you visualize this Gen.G roster, which is choke. That's what it is. So it's tough to get rid of that kind of moniker for now, but it also does mean that they got it out of the way early. My fiance said, well, it is fall in Brazil. So, usually around fall time is when Gen.G has some trouble. If you're south of the if you're south of the equator, it's fall time. So
Yeah, I guess that's
I was
true.
very, very proud of her for that one. Also, last side note from all of this here, from First Stand, the unofficial World Championship title now in the hands of BLG, going back to the LPL. I bet this thing is going to get passed around a ton, because LPL just beat everybody. So it beat each other all the time. So the unofficial title came in to the world through G2 and left now with BLG, who also left First Stand title and all their first international title as an organization. So congrats to them. BNK, they get a B- for me. BNK, we got to see who they were and more. My goal was to show the world how good Diablo was. Got to see that. And then they represented what they can be. Maybe B- is too nice. Maybe C+. I'm not as down on BNK as I am Gen.G. And I think
Expectations
that's
were not as high, right?
yeah.
For BNK, especially
Yeah.
after what happened in Hong Kong. We were like, is it possible? Like, I told everyone in Hong Kong, in our group chat, like our Slack chat, or our work chat, where I was just like, I'm having the vibes that like BNK could do it, like Gen.G might just choke and mess it up. Like, I had those vibes in Hong Kong. I was like, just a weird vibe. Like, you just have that. It's not in your brain. It's not logic. You're just like, I could see like a tragedy happening on this stage. Didn't happen. It was a few weeks later where that one came through. But it's the disappointment you feel that really tears you apart, I think, if you are a Gen.G fan, because you're probably trying not to tell yourself everything I said in the last episode about this is their year, this is the world's title, but
Yeah.
you do kind of believe it internally because your brain is telling you that this squad and your eyes are watching and transmitting
Yep.
the information to your brain, and you're like, this is their year, but your heart is telling you like, I've been burned before,
It hurts.
and guess what? You got burned again. And I don't know if Gen.G are ever going to get rid of the moniker of them being chokers. Even if they win MSI and Worlds this year, I guarantee you when First Stand rolls around in 2027, people are like, well, Gen.G might choke. It's an international year.
No way. If they win Worlds, I think it'll be like unfinished business First Stand. Winning Worlds will be the one. But it's just the the margin for error for this team
Yeah, but
is
like if you
so
win one
tiny.
Worlds and you choke like every other Worlds away that you've been to since like 2021, then I mean, aren't you still like 80% chokers? Like,
Yeah,
I
but
don't know if
like
one fixes it, but like it's
it's
moments like
so
these that just keep happening.
unfair.
It
It's
is
so
unfair, but it's just
unfair.
and I don't want to care. I don't want to this to like be carried into our region and for Gen.G forever. Because like I said, like, I know how much it means to these players, how much it means to the org. We talked about it last show. Like how much winning these international tournaments is so much more important to them, I think, than winning the stuff they've already won before. Like obviously had not participated in first stand, so they hadn't lifted a first stand trophy yet. Failed, right? Okay. Still haven't gotten that World's Trophy post Samsung. And if you lose here, I don't know what it means. Like, if you're Arnold, are you like, oh, cool, we got the choke out of the way early. Guess we'll be fine.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the only thing you can do.
What do you tell yourself?
That's what you gotta do, man. It's
or are you just like, oh god, it's gonna keep happening forever? Because that's how I'm feeling right now. That's how I'm feeling.
No. Like, there is so much time left in the season. These guys have been together for such a long time. They've all won and lost together now. I think it's just, all right, no more pressure of being perfect. They don't have to be perfect anymore. They just go out and continue to grow and then get ready to peak at the times where it's important to peak. But, I'm just looking at the comments from last episode. I believed it the first 4 times. Now 90% of the viewers know we believe it when it happens. There are 3 things that are true in life: death, taxes, and GenG choking at Worlds. How many years have we been saying this? It's getting old. This is just a different version of it. A 3-0. It wasn't like, oh, it's heartbreaking or whatever. It's 3-0 in a tournament that is in its 2nd year of existence. Like, all right, the embarrassment out of the way. I feel fine. I feel fine.
But do you think like G2 feels the same way, like about their win? Like, it's just a tournament, doesn't matter. I guess GenG didn't really care about this. I guess we just kind of won because it's like when you flip it around, you start to realize like we're being a little biased here to try to insinuate like, is it really that big of a deal? I think that this will be hopefully something that GenG and Ryu, like, it's either like we always have this discussion. I know it's probably old as hell to everybody and tired, but was it
But it's
Ryu
different this time.
But like, was it Ryu who said, "All right, you know what? We're just gonna kind of run this Yunara thing with the Gwen, and we'll play it out." Or like, was it Ryu who said, "Yeah, Keen, I'm gonna give you this counter pick to the Cassante, and we're gonna kind of just run this tankless, and we'll just win, like it's fine." Or was it Keen who said like, "No, Ryu, trust me, I'm gonna do this. I know better than you in this situation." We don't know. But whoever it was, or perhaps both, by the way, at different times and different scenarios in that series, need to take this as a learning experience because they gave themselves inferior tools, and G2 played phenomenally, and they used their fantastic drafts to just cut G2 down, or to cut GenG down. And I don't know what we can't know. Was it a overconfidence? Was it an underestimation? Like, was it a player specific read that went completely wrong, where like the players were arguing with Ryu's like, no, we need a front line here, and Keen was like, no, I need to win this lane, and something got crosswired there, crosswired, I should say. We'll never know, but like that's what has to be fixed, right? Is it like individual play from Canyon that like is something that's broken? It has been inconsistent, but I think Canyon will probably just bounce back and win like 4 POGs in a row or something in the first few weeks of LCK, and we're like, all right, well, yeah, I guess like he's back. We always do this. It happens every time. It's just he needs to be on in these internationals. I think Chovy individually had a pretty good series, even in the loss to G2. Like, it wasn't Chovy choked. Like, it was not choky, right? We said it's almost a slur to say that, right? It was not the case. Like, it wasn't his fault. It was drafting, and it was the whole team had issues. So LCK bombed. We lost. It is embarrassing. And, like the GenG versus T1 matchup that we are always waiting for is kind of like the shame matchup for this upcoming LCK season. T1 didn't even get to go, and like GenG, were they even there? Kind of matchup we have coming up. This is a moment of shame. The LCK will have to wear this in shame, and if everyone's like, it doesn't matter, it was only first stand, it was only this, I'm like, no. Shameful. It was a shameful showing. It was one of the worst showings of LCK since the last 7 years at an international event. Wow. Bad. Oh, do not do like. I was talking to Papa Smithy about this because he was in Korea. We were chatting a lot, but in his mind, he was like, "This is basically the biggest dunking on the LCK number 1, number 2 that any like European team has ever done. Period. Like in the history of League of Legends." Yeah. That's why I tweeted him saying it was like the Serral moment. Serral, StarCraft 2 player who was the Korean Slayer at a period of time. We had other teams, at other Blizzard events take out Korean squads here and there, but like this is League of Legends, right? This is the dominant LCK era, so we thought, and this is the dominant Gen.G here up against G2. Obviously, as you said, kept the roster together, but performance-wise, like for the LCK, the expectations were so high that you can't come back and just shake it off and be like, yeah, we did our best. Like it was a little unlucky, it is what it is. Like I don't think you can come back with that attitude, or you're definitely not winning MSI, and you're definitely not winning Worlds. So I don't think they will have that attitude.
What attitude are they supposed to have then? Because I think that is you learn from it and then you move on, right?
Sure. Well,
The
I mean, that's what I'm saying.
embarrassment happens the first day or two or whatever, and then you get to rewrite it again and start a new. How many tournaments in a row was it? 8 tournaments in a row won by a team from the LCK. 9 tournaments in a row, something like that. I think then that's how you move forward. You move forward that way. You just
Yeah,
shake
I
it
just
off
think
and
that,
keep going.
the improvement though, the humble improvement needs to happen first, right? Like that needs to be happening right now. Like they need to be talking about this right now before we go into LCK, and not go back into LCK where LCK is such a freebie for this team in some ways that we've always talked about this for some of our other regions, like we call them the wild card regions, the minor regions.
Yep.
When like the Turkish team comes in and we're like, ah, yes, this team dominated their region again, and like they didn't drop a single game to like anybody on their way in, and like how can they improve when they're like very clearly the best team in the region? There's so many teams like that we've seen in Worlds over the years, right? And Gen.G is almost kind of like that for the LCK, where it's like, how can they even get better when it's like just so easy and such a freebie? Like, how do you even train to improve or work on weaknesses when no one ever punishes you? And then suddenly, like G2 shows up, and you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll train harder later. No, you have to really think about what you did there. You can't just go like, I'll train harder for LCK. We'll scrim harder. We'll play more solo queue. Because I think you got to identify the issues you had in this moment specifically. Make sure that that doesn't happen again. Because they obviously didn't learn from the LCK how to prevent this situation.
Yeah,
That's my take.
when you bring up those minor regions, I think of like Detonation Focus Me every year.
Yeah, it's like every year they're there.
Gam.
Every time. Gam
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah. So GenG will open the season against world finalists and 9th place finishers in LCK Cup, KT roster, and then their international mates in BNK FearX, and then week 2, the big one of the big ones, it's T1 versus GenG. So they don't get, and then DPlus. They really don't get a lot of easy games to kick things off. There is no Soopers or Bros until much, much later on. Then they played the Bros of week 3, and then Hanwha. Where are all the weak teams for Gen.G to play? Week 4, DNS.
Hanwha sounded pretty.
Yeah, Nongshim, and then there it is, KRX. That's right. We will cover that one too. The Kiwoom DRX selling the naming rights.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was our review of a first stand. Again, congrats to BLG and G2 for reigniting the world's passion for League of Legends. Hopefully, the first international win for a team. Going back to, what is it, JDG 2023 MSI, I believe is the last one. So, all right. Now, before we dive into our preview, our early predictions, our rankings of the squads in the LCK, it's time to remind you about our friends over at Into the AM. Shop Into the AM's site-wide sale. Items are up to 60% off site-wide through March 31st. That's very, very soon. Get to it. This is in addition to the 10% you can always save by using our code LFN or by using the link intotheam.com/LFN. That's intotheam.com/LFN. One of my favorite pairs of shorts comes from Into the AM. Love the fit. The blazers that I wear, or the jackets, the bombers, not blazers, bombers that I wear on the broadcast, get that from Into the AM as well. So go ahead, check them out, intotheam.com/LFN.
You see most of the t-shirts that I wear under my blazers, which is often my go-to, are from Into the AM. I have a ton of pants that I wear around the house. We call homeware in Korea, but I've got the joggers. They keep me comfortable, they keep me warm, and I love the quality. And if you're looking for graphic, design on your t-shirts, there's so many options there. So I if you're not going to do anything else, at least go and browse the website. You could actually spend quite a bit of time going through the selection they have there.
Yeah, the site's well built as well. A lot of times you go to different sites and you can't figure out how to navigate it. Into the AM makes it super easy. So thanks to our friends over at Into the AM. That's intotheam.com/LFN to check out the 60% off site-wide sale and the additional 10% off by using our code LFN. All right, Wolf. How do you want to do? Do you want to rank your teams bottom to top and compare? Like, have you thought about this lately? Do
Well,
we want to go with the
I'd rather
names? We got a couple of
I
names different.
I'd rather so the kind of the way I want to look at this is to just kind of talk about what teams we're interested in and what teams we're kind of looking forward to, for example, because if we try to rank all of the teams, we'll just end up looking silly because there's a lot of information we don't have. But maybe trying to say, like, for example, what our expectations for Hanwha are, because that's one of the biggest question marks we have, I think is a more fun discussion. We could talk about some of the naming stuff as well, just to get it out of the way. Obviously,
Yeah.
HANJIN has been a BRION sponsor for a while, but couldn't get the naming sponsor approved, it looks like, until very recently. So now they're officially HANJIN BRION. And the tri-code, as far as I can tell, has still remained bro. So
Thank God. Thank God.
They're still the bros, and they're not the only naming sponsor we have, as we do have.
Wouldn't that
Kiwoom.
be silly if, you've been known as this moniker for such a long time and all of a sudden you got to change the moniker and it doesn't make sense when your the branding of your whole organization is your tri-code? Man, that would stink. All right, go ahead, Wolf.
Yeah, so all right, so for bros, right? They are when they became bro because they lost. So for those who don't even remember why they became bro, like they ended up losing their Fredit sponsorship, right? And then they were just BRION, and then they ended up getting the OK Savings Bank BRION moniker later. So they were bro, and then they were OK bro later on, which was very funny. And so like we ended up calling them the bros. Whereas like before people were calling them like Reddit Brian and stuff when they had the Fredit sponsorship, which was quite a unique sponsorship, like the Fredit sponsorship. That's one of the wackiest ones we've had. I mean, the amount of like Fredit is such a unique company. I'm not going to get into it all, like completely, but that was a weird one.
I need you to get into it a little bit because
okay.
My parents are visiting, and Fredit is the way that you'll see it is it looks like they're these carts, like like Dippin' Dots that have the carts.
It's like a mini concession stand kind of thing.
Yes,
like it's
yes.
And so they basically sell these yogurt products, essentially, is what I would call them. I don't know the best way to describe this in English, but they ride these carts around and they have these yogurt products that are cooled inside the cart, so they're always fresh and cool when they're served. It's obviously much more common to see these older women driving these carts around when it's warmer outside and there's a lot of people outside. And so like they're driving these carts down the sidewalk or sometimes just straight up the street if it's a less trafficked street. And something is, and I don't want to say it's like the equivalent of like when you see an ice cream truck, you like go running out to get it. But if you're if it's a hot day and you see that, you're kind of like, yeah, maybe I'll go grab some. I'm not 100% sure on this, but because I see some of these carts coming around pretty regularly at certain times, I think they also do delivery. So they like ride these carts around and deliver like to your door if you order them. I'm pretty sure, just because I see these carts going up to apartment buildings and stuff, and then people going into the apartment building. So I think there might be something going on there. Anyway, that was the old sponsorship. It's pretty weird. They sell a bunch of other like food related products and stuff online, or at least they did last time I looked into it. HANJIN is a massive company in Korea that does a lot of things like Hanwha, and is obviously known a lot for shipping. And so you've probably seen, like, if you've been to a shipyard, HANJIN, shipping crates in your life, if you ever seen
HANJIN's like FedEx or DHL. It's big. It's super big.
It is big. It is a huge sponsor for them. So that's massive. But I think because they know that they've always been BRION, like the org, despite changing sponsorships, right, has always been BRION. So like they kept bro. They know that, in my opinion, like frankly, even though a lot of their sponsors have been Korean and Korean based, because it's tough to translate to global, I think they know a lot of their fans are global fans and know the bro moniker, so they kept their tri-code. On the other hand, DRX, DRX also
World
got
Championship winning
massive.
2022 DRX. Oh my god.
So we have so many, like the LCK now has so many massive sponsors in it, right? Like we have the BNK sponsorship, right? There's DN, and then you have Kia, which by the way is a Korean company. When we have Kia overseas, it's like feels a little bit different than when you have Kia in Korea, right? For DPlus. You have HANJIN for BRION. You have Hanwha and Hanwha Life, because it's not fully Hanwha, right? It's the life insurance branch, Hanwha Life. You
Which
have
is still
KT
massive.
and T1, telecom companies, right? So if you're in the US, think like AT&T and Verizon, okay? Massive companies. Then you have Nongshim, which is one of the biggest food distributors in Korea, who make not only like the ramen, but tons of other snacks. They sell water. Like this company is bigger than you can even imagine. And now we have Hanjin in here. And Kiwoom is a big securities company that spends big dollars on their sports teams. Like KT, famously, KT Sports, even though KT is a massive company in Korea, doesn't like to spend too much money. Kiwoom is like, I spend the big bucks. I spend all the money. And they signed DRX right before the beginning of the season. And they actually, I didn't even notice this until literally right now. They changed the logo as well. Like not the fact that they have like Kiwoom, it says Kiwoom Holdings in Korean underneath it, but like the logo has like the arrow going up, which I actually hadn't noticed until literally just now.
If you angle it, it's a K, dude. Just,
oh my
right?
god. Kind of, yeah, kind of. So their tri-code becomes KRX, which has been the subject of a lot of debate around a lot of people, because a lot of people are like, why aren't DRX anymore? No, they're Kiwoom DRX. Okay, so they're not in any case in any way KRX. What does KRX mean? KRX means Kiwoom DRX. That's what KRX means. If they could have a quad code instead of a tri-code, they definitely would have gone with KDRX. But because they only have 3 letters, they opted to say, we're the naming sponsor. We're going to take the first letter. It's going to be KRX as the tri-code. But when you see KRX, doesn't mean the team is KRX. It means the team is Kiwoom DRX. So that's like what has happened here. It's needlessly confusing to a lot of people, but they probably, I don't know how much money they spent. They probably spent a lot of money to get the naming sponsor. So DRX probably just said, look, that's part of the deal. If you want to have the K in the name, you got to pay X more dollars. And the organization, as far as I know, is not purchased by Kiwoom. It's just a naming sponsor, just like Fredit was for BRION, just like HANJIN is for BRION. Whereas, for example, KT is run by KT and KT Sports. Same with Hanwha. Hanwha's not just a naming sponsor, and there's some other org operating Hanwha. It's not like Rox is still sitting in there, being like, "Give me the Hanwha sponsorship." I'm just going to change the name. No, it's actually run by Hanwha, right? They have their own facilities. This is just a naming sponsor, the same way Soup still owns the DN SOOPers, right? And so that's just a naming sponsorship there. I wanted to make this clear to everybody because a lot of people are like, "Oh, they're KRX now." I have a funny anecdote I could tell about this as well. Was I always thought, okay, foreigners just can't get this because they don't know these huge companies. They just don't get it that like these companies are massive and we don't have sponsorships like this that much. Like you and I were talking about the other day, TL Honda is like one of those ones that gets about as close as it gets to that in terms of Western sponsorships being like really known brands.
Wait, it did, right? Now it's TL
well,
Alienware. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there was a small disaster with that sponsorship. Big disaster, I would say. Unfortunately, rip big names in Western esports. But I'm not getting into that. That's old news now. I was at a Chinese restaurant yesterday.
Okay.
And you know, when you live in Korea, especially because outside of Korea in esports, like esports just hasn't permeated as much as it has here. When you're in Korea and you hear people talking about the LCK around you, which happens actually, believe it or not, if you're watching this and you're like, I don't know, does that really happen? It actually happens a lot. You hear people talking about the LCK on the train, wherever you are. Whatever it happens to me, I get like kind of excited. I'm like, ooh, I want to hear what these fans have to say. So I'm in this Chinese restaurant near my house, and there's 3 guys who are, I want to say between like 20 and 22 years old, like pretty young. Like much younger than I would say like your average hardcore LCK fan is right now. And one guy just suddenly says like, why the hell did they change their name from DRX to KRX? And then the other guy at the table is trying to... The other guy at the table is just trying to explain that I think it's just a naming sponsor. They probably got paid a lot. And the other guy was like, no, I'm pretty sure they just changed their whole name. And they like couldn't even really like suss it out as to like whether or not that was actually accurate or not. And they were arguing about it. And then the third guy at the table was just like, just let it go and let's eat. God, this is dumb. But they were arguing about it, right? And I realized in that moment I was like, well, I guess I was wrong. Like this is actually confusing to young Korean fans as well to have the name change like this. Like it was not just me being like, oh, I guess Western fans just can't get it because they don't know what Kiwoom is. And so a lot of people are going to be annoyed about it. A lot of people are not going to like it. But if you're a true DRX fan, you should probably like the fact that maybe this money means in the future they can actually get a real team that could be a real contender, like the one that they won the world championship with in 2022.
Wolf is the one that is like, no, you guys are idiots. They're definitely going to keep it DRX. It's Kiwoom DRX. Anyone else that thinks otherwise is dumb. I don't know. I see the tri code. It says KRX. So I was like, can we just call it KRX? That way it still rhymes with D, but it's the first sound of Kiwoom, KRX, and then they won't get mad. Wolf very much on one side of that one.
It's the same thing with BNK, right? But BNK they were FOX, okay. They could have just gone with BNK, but they really wanted to keep their Fearless Foxes moniker
in the
super bad.
Yeah.
And then they're like, okay, we're not really Foxes because then we don't like it when people say that we're Foxes. We just picked it as the tri-code. So I went from Foxes to BNK, but like, they're sorry, to BFX because they wanted to keep the FearX part, not the Foxes part, but still got the B in there. Instead of just becoming BNK.
Which I'm sure all of you at home know that. Bank of Busan is the sponsor of FearX, the organization. So we've got to call it BNK FearX.
I'm not even 100% sure, but I think it's the Busan National Bank of Korea is what BNK stands for. But like the amount of hoops you had to go through for all of this for BFX to be called BNK is very funny. And I think that one is much sillier than the DRX one because nobody called BNK FOX. In fact, we were very much discouraged to call them FOX or Fox at any point. So trying to hold on to the FX there felt silly. If I were them, I'd be like, maybe BNK just didn't want to pay, but I'd be like, if you guys just pay like a little bit more, we'll just make the tri-code BNK. How does that sound?
Yeah,
our brand isn't even that strong. As we made the established in 2018 with a big ear Fox logo, but like, is our brand really that strong?
It's getting stronger. They got, we had the mascot wars. We had the Fox, and then we have Genrangi, and then we got Ati. They're all in there like bouncing around, smack the back of the head, start bouncing up and down. Remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I will tell you guys that probably everyone, including me, at some point will say KRX when it's not actually KRX. But if you do call KRX, just know that you're not doing Kiwoom any favors because they're not, that's not their brand name. They're just the K in it, and that's what they paid for. But you're also not doing DRX any service by just not using their team name correctly. They wanted to keep their brand, so they only put the K in, and now they're KRX. They would have loved to be KDRX 100%, but it doesn't fit. It's called a tri-code.
I will reserve judgment until we get an official call on this. This is Wolf pushing this out in an ideal world. But
I mean, you can also just call them DRX
we get official judgment.
You can also just call them DRX still.
You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ask our boss to tell us what to call them. That is what I'm going to do, Wolf. So for now,
I'll put
DRX.
big money on it. Yeah, I'll put big money on dGon. I think she's going to say Kiwoom DRX. I think that's what she's going to say.
And then afterwards, what do we say? Are we allowed to say DRX, or is this a FearX kind of problem that we ran into? I don't know. Anyways, all right. We this was supposed to be a side note. This ended up being such a big part of it because we're that passionate about it. Hopefully you're passionate about it as well. Kiwoom, and then finally for Kiwoom, it is like Robinhood or Charles Schwab or any brokerage to trade stocks and that kind of stuff. That is the type of money, hopefully.
And the logo claims
organization will be able to get it.
The logo claims that the DRX stocks are going up with this sponsorship, so we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's start with them. because these are my 2 last place teams. DRX and the Bros. I love my Bros, and I am excited to see what Loki can do. But as you know, this is a Teddy team. And when you have a Teddy team, you have to like Teddy and like it when he does well and just ignore when he doesn't do well. And it's going to be a tough year because Namgung is the support. The Goonger.
You know how there's just been this new trend of like talking about. I don't know if you've heard of this. I just learned about this like a week or two ago. It's almost like the new MBTI thing, whether or not you're a T-shaped person or like an M-shaped person. Have you heard of this? Like a T-shaped person is like building up to like one skill set, like so like the base is somewhat narrow, but they're incredibly good at like one thing, right? They get to the you get to the top and they're like not knowledge of that one thing is like incredibly good. And then like someone who's like M-shaped is someone who has like a lot of interest. They have like their hands in a lot of pies, but they're not as good at any one thing as the T-shaped person is at their one thing. And like there's a lot of discussion about this. People are like, is AI gonna ruin T-shaped people who have one skill set and then they don't have other skill sets, right? Teddy is funny for this because I feel like this team is T-shaped, right? It's Teddy shaped. Like he's really good at carrying the late game, and like that's all they have. And if Teddy doesn't get online or if he gets put down early, it's like that's it. Good luck. You're not going to be able to win the game. I agree with you. I think they have to play around him and they have to just hope for the best. And like Loki is a cool X factor. We talked about him a lot in our last episode about how he has a great opportunity to turn his career around. And I think that's for me like what's more exciting than what it means for Bro. And if he delivers, then like we can say it's not necessarily a Teddy shaped T-shaped team. DRX on the other hand, there were moments for me in the LCK Cup where I was like, oh wait a minute, this team kind of like pretty okay, pretty interesting. But I just can't get past the fact that like Rich will sometimes just I don't even want to say int, but like he'll just have an embarrassing moment where you're like, what? And then like you see him put his hands on his head, and you're like, we're all kind of at a loss for words here. What happened there? He has too many issues. UCal has like he spikes sometimes, and you're like, wow, UCal's really good. But for the most part, you're like, UCal is pretty funny. And Gio looked a lot better. Like Gio improved a lot. I think we can all agree with that. But it doesn't necessarily.
He got the shackles. He got the shackles of Lehens off of him. There's no more Lehen stress there. I think him being in a loving family, as we've talked about the G-Wooverse episode, will do well for this squad, and they have a puncher's chance. I actually think Bro are going to be very bad, and I don't think DRX are going to be that much worse than the rest of the playoff team. But I do think that they are worse than Nongshim, and so I just am worried about the gap for my Bros, and I think you're right. DRX, they have ways to play through. You only have one concern on, if they're going to have a bad game, but everyone else, you have ways to play through. And also waiting in the wings, still waiting for Vincenzo to potentially get an opportunity to play in front of Willer. So like they have options. They have fun options. Like Bro had 3 mid laners there for a little while, then had to cut Roamer and cut Fisher to go with Loki. But I think there's some ceiling there for Kiwoom DRX.
There you go.
Who else jumps out at you here, Wolf?
I mean, I think we could talk very briefly about some of these other teams that are pretty known quantities, like the SOOPers and KT Rolster, which obviously KT had a pretty nice like turnaround in the latter part of LCK Cup, but it wasn't obviously enough to really like amount to anything big. And then the SOOPers are looking good with their XKT bottom setup. Also, notably, I guess we should mention this was announced or like revealed, whatever, by the Challengers broadcast a few hours ago. But Ghost is playing in Challengers, so it looks pretty likely that Palu will be the starting player. We have sometimes, rarely, like it's usually a pretty good indicator that when someone's playing in Challengers, they're not starting in LCK because it's a lot of workload, and it happens sometimes with emergencies where somebody's ill and they have to go to Challengers just to like fix it and then come back to LCK. My point being that we don't know this 100%, but it's a very strong indicator that it will be Palu starting, which I don't know how I feel about it. I want to say that makes sense to me, to be honest, because I think Ghost obviously just isn't experienced enough. And I hate it because we interviewed him. I'm pretty sure I was there sitting next to you on the couch when we interviewed him, and he was like, "Yeah, they picked me for my experience. I know a lot about the game. Like that's why they chose me." Whereas when I watch him in game, I'm like, "Your hands are good, but you seem to lack the judgment about what's going on in the game." And I think that's like I think that both can be true. Like Ghost can know a lot about the game, but when he's in game, he's like so focused on his mechanics that he kind of forgets what he
The
knows because
job.
he's like, I gotta hit this hook, I gotta hit this dredge line, I gotta play this fight hyper aggressive because I was playing too slow. The last team fight or whatever. Paulo just is the veteran support compared to him because guess what? He's a support for his career, whereas Ghost is swapping. I actually think playing in challengers could potentially be good for Ghost to get just a little bit more reps in and before he's ready to come in because his mechanics look pretty good. The problem is playing in challengers is so wonky and so out of control and so silly that maybe he doesn't learn anything. Maybe in fact he develops bad habits. I don't know, but it could be good
Yeah.
for him. But KT have the ceiling of their support, whether it's Palu or whether it's Ghost. And obviously BDD hasn't been performing as well as he did last year, so we're just not seeing this team be that interesting. I'm much more interested in the Soopers, to be honest, because I think they haven't really
Yep.
hit their ceiling yet. I think there's still a lot of room to grow there, and they have decided on Peter seemingly as their starting support over Life, which I think is for me it always felt obvious, but a lot of people have other takes based on Peter's Worlds performance. But I'm interested in them. Those are the ones that we were kind of like, okay, these are the bad teams that could be good, so we can like move on to the next tier of like Hanwha Life is a good team that could be bad. Like, is that
Well, just KT is my big regressor. KT is the team where I'm like, okay, you finished fourth last year, you went to World Finals, but it really just hammers home how important it is to get at least people that can do their jobs at support. And I just feel like, you know, having watching President Palu for the last 2 years, it's just not good for KT. It's not good for KT. And until patch 2607 hits where there's buffs to his ear, um, BDD won't be able to 1v9. So that is my concern there. And then Perfect is Perfect regressing back. Like there are just too many questions for this KT roster. And then a big ask of Palu to be someone that he's not, which is very good. Like, or consistent, which he's not
to
that
me?
either. So I
To me,
think KT's the regressor.
I always thought that KT had um a high potential ceiling right on their roster last year. Like, we were like,
Yeah.
okay, we've seen Perfect at his best. Like on Perfect's Giga Chad games, we're like, damn, this guy's actually super good. And then I was always pushing that Duck Dom is elite, but he was often not. Like at the beginning of the year, he was the most criticized 80 carry right in LCK, and Peter I think has always been high potential, right? But it hasn't found consistency. So like KT hit this perfect storm of everyone is hitting hard and hitting right at the exact right moment during Worlds, and then they ended up getting those big upsets. Like KT beating GenG is kind of like G2 beating GenG in a way, where maybe GenG just doesn't get the right read, and KT's playing phenomenally. It's cause similar to SkewMond who pops off, right? And Caps and BDD, similar scenario there. Like you can make those comparisons to how that went down last year, to very recent events. But I know the ceiling of Paulo and Ghost. I know it. Like it is very known. And I think we kind of know the ceiling for aiming as well. Like I think we're at this point he's been around for long enough to we're like, yeah, you have one play style. We know it. Everyone gives the resources to you, but you often get caught and die. And then we're like, okay, well, there's the bag, just dumped into the ocean. It's like dropping a huge treasure chest just into the abyss. And you're like, okay, well, guess that's that. All our eggs were in the aiming basket and it didn't work. And like you can't play that way when cousin BD is the best part of your team. So it just doesn't work. I think the ceiling is pretty low, sadly,
Yeah.
for KT.
A better example is KT beating GenG is like DRX beating GenG, right? Back in 2022.
Sure.
Same kind of thing. They caught fire at the right time and worked their way on in. And I think just it'll be interesting to see how those parts do over in the Soopers with the year of closer actually here, maybe. Um Yeah, that team has a higher ceiling. I'm excited to see them sneak into the legend group and then be the punching bag for everyone else. Let's move to the big question, which is HLE, Hanwha. Wolf, are
Yeah, so
you
we did, like I
a
said, we did the teams
buyer
like
or a seller?
bad
A
teams that could
buyer or a
be
seller?
good, good teams that could be
Good
bad.
teams that could be bad.
That could be
Are they a
bad.
good team that could be bad, or a bad team that could be, or a good team that might be better? I mean, they were 10th, so they're going to be better.
I expect that Hanwha Life will look similar to what they looked like in LCK Cup early.
Whoa, no way. You're a seller.
I am a seller. I sold. Like, I don't even have anything left, and I would not be buying, even though the price is low. Here's why, right? Like, is it because Guma is bad? Which is everyone is like waiting right now. Like, is it going to say because Guma is bad? No, I actually think Guma is probably the least relevant part of this. I think that Kanavi and Zeka are not good for each other. Okay, they don't belong together. And maybe they rushed into things too soon with this roster. And by too soon, I mean literally Kanavi was the last possible jungler they could have gotten after Peanut retired, and like they had to get him, and there was no other choice. And so it actually wasn't too soon. It was very slow and painful for Hanwha, but it didn't work out, right? Kanavi, the leash was never put on. Zeus is in a situation where he can't play the same way, like oppositely from Guma than when they were both top and bottom laners on T1, because the mid lane just isn't able to roam and impact either side. Kanavi is playing his own game, which is I'm going to push my advantage so far, and I'm sure my teammates will back me up. And Zeka's like, man, I don't have prio. Where are you going? And I think that these issues obviously are solvable, but it's going to take a long time. And yes, there's been a long time between Hanwha, who was the first team to be eliminated from LCK Cup, and now, which is why they're the biggest question mark. But I don't think it's problems you can solve through just like some casual scrimming with the teams that are not going to first stand. You know what I mean? Like Hanwha probably played a ton of games against the LCK teams, probably some LPL teams, played a lot of games against T1, no doubt, since T1 didn't go to first stand. But also they probably took a long break. You know, they probably took some time off. I don't think that we can expect Hanwha Life is just going to be like a top 2 team swinging out of the gates just because T1 had the bad, read against DPlus that one time. Like suddenly Hanwha could be better than them. Like I don't think we should make any expectations like that. I literally, what I'm saying, bottom line is, I think Hanwha will have the same problems, maybe a little bit better, but I don't think we'll see a significant change until later on. Maybe after like round 1, they'll have figured it out. But for the beginning of the year, I'm like, I could put them at like 4th place at best. Like 4th place at best. At worst, maybe like 6th or 7th. Somewhere in that range. Like could be on the rise side of things. That's my
All right, that was Wolf's take, everyone. My take is give me the Hanwha stock. Give me all of the Hanwha stock. Because I think that their issues weren't playstyle issues. I think their issues were communication issues. My fiance is a very big Hanwha Life Esports fan, so therefore I've been consuming a lot of the Hanwha Life Esports content on her days off, and that seems to be it. Maybe it is just a cope take where the guys are like, "Oh, if we just had a couple more stage games or a little bit more time," which I believe Kanavi didn't get there right away. Then they would be able to talk more about how they see the game. All these guys are pros and they're very malleable, they're very experienced, but you are leaving a massive gap in how the game was being ran, which was peanut. And then you're losing your insurance policy, which was Viper Life Esports. We called it last year. Instead, you get a guy who you can play around and win worlds with in Guma if you play his style, right? And he had champ pool stuff, but he definitely worked through that last year at the end of last year. And you have a guy that is learning how to be even more malleable than when he won world championships in Zeus. So now it's just how do we see the game? Because a lot of the time with this Hanwha Life Esports squad from LCK Cup, we would see them get an early lead and then mid-game, disaster. Like that's what would happen. Or in the case of like the Nongshim series early on in the season, which was the crucial loss that lost them the tiebreaker, they got to the late game call to try to go to Baron and lost a 4v5 and then got ran down mid and lost a game. And then that kind of like broke them. right, early on. So that to me, it's just communication issues between
I
this team.
I
And
think
I
there's
think that is
definitely
something that you can work through there to achieve the potential of the talent on this roster.
I think there's definitely communication issues. I 100% agree with that. Like we've seen it in so many teams. Like DPlus has always been the org that seems like they would be so good if they could just fix that one issue, right?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what roster it is; it just continues to persist for them, whether Barrel's in the team or not.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna say it doesn't matter who's there.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I think that's something that you can work on. But what I've learned from being in the LCK for the last 5 and now really going on 6 years here is that the LCK really struggles to change 2 things: their ability to figure out shot calling. Like that is one of the that seems to be impossible to solve. If you have bad shot calling, you can't solve it even if you have a year. Like that just seems to be the case. And also, players don't change their play styles. Like, name one player who's really changed their play style in a meaningful way over the last 5 years. Like, there really just isn't one. Like Pays almost I feel like is the one where I could be like, yeah, he kind of, he's a little bit more aggro these days instead of just sitting back and farming. Um, and I think when I look at this roster, I'm like, it just won't ever work. Is kind of where I'm at. And even Delight doesn't look like he's in form. Like Delight hasn't changed, but he's just like a little bit sloppy because he doesn't trust his team, and
Yeah.
that is so difficult to fix. It is so difficult to fix. And like it seems like it would be easy. You just kind of scrim a lot and get to know each other, and everybody becomes friends, and you just suddenly get the magic. There's a reason why T1 and GenG kept the core for these rosters, and it's not just because they have the most money and they can buy the best, most expensive players. Like they want to keep this specific core because they work well together. They trust each other. They don't need the shot calls sometimes in these team fights because they all are on the same page already because they've built that up. And they had it early, and they kept it, and they iterated on it, they improved on it. And this Hanwha Life roster, in my opinion, obviously, unless I'm completely off base and they do just fix these problems and they end up like winning the LCK and going into a great Worlds performance, I think this roster blows up. It's super expensive, and it's got like the Kanavi band-aid to the peanut problem, and I just don't think it's what Hanwha even wanted, but they had very few options, right, to figure this roster out with Viper leaving and Peanut leaving. Like, how do you patch those holes? It's so incredibly difficult, and it's expensive no matter what you do.
I just love this because I feel like this is a we're both right until the matches happen, right? You could look at it very pessimistically like Wolf does. You could look at it very optimistically like the way that I am and see what happens. But we just won't know. That's the
Well, that's why
great
it's
part
fun, right?
about this.
That's the fun one about it. Like, and I have no idea where I would put Hanwha. Like, if someone put their gun to my head and said, like, where do they finish after round 1? I'd probably be like, I don't know, 5th, I guess. Like, does that seem right? Like, I guess, like, I can't say 3rd. I definitely can't say top 2. It's really weird. It's a
Round
really
1, I say
difficult
4.
place
Round
to
1, I say I think they go to MSI. That is my early wild take. Like I am that high on this team. My fear though, that now that you brought up the years of experience and seeing it so many times and me thinking about how many times I've been burned, there's usually always one team that makes the roster moves that it blows up in their face. And you're kind of like, ooh, that did not work. Last year it
let
was
me
DNF. This year, like it could be like it could also be like KT Rolster, right? Going from world finals, you bring in aiming back, and then you try to promote a young guy that doesn't work. Or it could be the SOOPers where they're trying to get the parts together and make it, and it doesn't work. It could be putting Vincenzo in for DRX and it doesn't work. Like it doesn't have to always be the super team that crashes, but there are the times where that's the case as well.
let me put this into like into different terms, in terms of like, how will these players change their styles? Like, can they change it? Can they figure out the shot calling? These kind of questions. The youngest players on this roster, the players who are like arguably like the least experienced, like the most malleable, like compared to the other ones, like it's Zeus and Guma. Like, think about that. Like, Zeka Kanavi had earlier debuts, Delight. And on High Fresh, like, he's been around longer than Zeus and Guma. Like, Zeus
That's
and
a
Guma are
pretty
the
good
youngest
point.
players on this roster. Okay? Like, these players are fixed in their ways. Like, Zeus and Guma have won world championships together, by the way.
Wolf, you're killing me with facts.
Like I just don't. I like they've played on T1 for a really long time, and then Zayas obviously started to figure it out pretty well on Hanwha, and they played around Viper a little bit, and they figured out their ways to work it out last year. Like Zayas had a pretty strong year on Hanwha Life towards the beginning, especially. Like Hanwha didn't have the greatest end, but still was a respectable finish in 2025. Much better than what I think is going to happen this year. It's Kanavi who's been in the LPL for so long. Like, he spent his whole career there. That, like, how can he be like Peanut when he's like too old to change, you know? Like, Peanut couldn't be like Kanavi either. You know, if you put Peanut on an LPL roster and like play like Kanavi, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? Like,
yeah.
They're too old to change. And that's like one of the things we have at the LCK, why I think so many of these players don't change their style, why shot calling problems are tough to solve. There's some of these players who push into a shot calling role like, well, my old team I was on for 3 years across my like 8-year career here in the LCK. Like, I didn't have to do that. Now I have to do something different than I've trained my whole career for. We don't have all these rookies that are popping up and building up Hanwha Life Esports that are super hype, that are going to be in these positions to change the force of the team. All 5 of these players are like, I know what I do well, and I think it doesn't work well together. I'm saying the same thing over again, but I really just want to hit that home that like the youngest, least experienced players are the world champions in Zayas and Guma. So that's wild, right? But that is what it is.
That's a great point. All right, he's a seller. I'm a buyer, with now a little bit of buyer's remorse listening to Wolf here, but we'll see. I'm buying it. I just come on, guys. Is there another team that jumps out at you that you want to hit on, that I feel like, yeah, that you want to hit on before we just go into predictions for week 1 here, Wolf? Is it the T1 look? Is it DPlus?
I think T1. I think T1 and DPlus. I think T1 and DPlus are worth the discussion. Obviously, we know a little bit more about, like, Nongshim is not that interesting, and then BNK we obviously saw very recently. GenG we just talked about a lot. So, I think for DPlus and T1, my read is that with better drafting, T1 is definitely the better team. And you know, what's similarly to what happened to GenG at first hand happened to T1 in that series against DPlus that knocked them out of contention. I think T1 are going to bounce back in a big way. I do think that they're probably going to be a top 2 team. Like, I think that will be pretty clear. I think they're going to ultimately be better than BNK. I'm not saying that BNK is not relevant, but I think long term, as we move into a few weeks in, we'll know, okay, there's a pretty big gap. T1 adapts very quickly, generally speaking, to mistakes they make, especially around the end of the year. But even going into this year starting out as rough as it did, like, there's a big difference between T1's loss to DPlus and their loss to Hanwha, who ended up winning both LCK Cup and First Stand last year. Like, when T1 got knocked out early there, you were like, I guess they just, I guess Hanwha's just really good. And then when T1 lost to DPlus, like, a lot of people were like, I guess T1's just really bad. They were not bad. They were bad on the day, right? And
yeah.
I do think T1, people never sleep on T1, right? Because they're T1 and they're gonna do really well. But I think people might kind of be reminded very quickly of how good this team is. And then DPlus on the other side, I think they had some really cool moments. Like, they had some flashy moments. They performed well up until Hong Kong, and then it all kind of came crashing down. I don't want to say DPlus is overrated, because I don't think people are rating them too highly, but I do think that if this team is going to be a real contender, it's going to have to come through CVMax figuring out what's going on with career. And I know we talked about, like, the controversy around the kind of like angry looking hype up from CVMax, like the aggressive motivation.
Over.
Yeah, that sort of stuff. Like, that's what you might fix you in a series. Like, that might be what gets you across the line in a series where you're just having an off day. But we're gonna have to see, like, CVMax's real behind the scenes coaching, like, at work. Well, we won't physically see it, but we'll have to see, like, the effects of it, right? Or assume that the effects of it are going into career, and see him grow and improve, because on his best games, he actually is quite good, right? We all remember that Alistair game from just a few weeks ago, but he seems to be weighing this team down heavily in his bad games. And so I think he is kind of like the temperature gauge for DPlus Kia, because we know what the rest of the 4 are capable of. And yes, Showmaker can have an off day, and yes, Lucid and Shiu can have an off day, and sometimes Smash is too aggressive. But like, if the career is playing well, this team does a lot better. So we need to see what's happened during the off season here and how quickly he can improve.
He is Palu for DPlus Kia. Like that I think is fair to say. And end of round one, top two, T1 GenG for sure. Like I just don't think there's a question about it. T1 GenG, I think I still have DPlus in front of Hanwha, and then by the end, when we get to Road Demo side, just get to the dance. That's all you need to do. Get to the dance and then be in form at that time. We saw T1 did that to Hanwha last year.
So would you have Gen.G T1 BNK then DPlus then Hanwha? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying like BNK is much lower?
BNK is much lower. I have them regressing. Like I just it was Pony. Pony on the LCK Korean broadcast was like, I believe in Vikla. And I was like, I don't know. I can't believe in Vikla. Then he won those 2 series to get them into first stand. I was like, fuck, I gotta believe in Vikla now. He proved it. And then he went back and never really played well. I don't think he ever played well like at first stand. I was like, fuck, he went back to bad
I mean,
Vikla.
his Hong Kong was a disaster.
He was he had some stomach issues. He had some stomach issues there. So, he wasn't feeling as well, but yeah, like it's just great guy. I want to support him. He's fun when he wins, but he's just so coin flippy that it stunts this team. It just stunts this team. And so I would rather just take, even though Showmaker wasn't playing necessarily all that great either, over the long period, he'll get it right. Showmaker just gets bored and then he just starts fucking around too much. So for this, I will go GenG T1, DPlus Hanwha, BNK. And then, if anyone else flips around there, it'll be a surprise. I think the easiest strength of schedule in the first several weeks is actually Nongshim. Nongshim play all the bottom teams, in my opinion, bottom teams. So Nongshim might get like a 3-1, 4-0 start, be at the top of the table before they play the big boys and get ran. But
That's
who knows?
really
Maybe
like
Scott has a resurgence.
I think absolutely people should remember this because I can already see a world where like Noshim go 3-1 or 4-0 and everyone's like, oh, Lens. I can actually already see it. I can already see it. Like it's so clear in my mind. And I'm gonna be like, wait, and everyone's gonna be like, well, Wolf. I mean, they're like ahead of T1 in the standings. So I'm like, okay, guys.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to it. Our official week 1 predictions as the LCK kicks off on Wednesday and goes 9 weeks straight. We don't have a week off, right, Wolf? I'm pretty sure there's no.
I don't think so. This half. I'm looking.
Yeah, there's no wonky break.
No, not this time.
Dang, we are all the way through 9 weeks until we get to playoffs and the road to MSI over 2 weeks. It'll be the playoffs first, then our in-sight battle, and then we'll send the boys off to dGon, which isn't that far, but it's a little far. Week 1, Hanwha versus Bro. Wolf.
Pretty straightforward. Like it's a good time to make predictions about Hanwha because this week is pretty obvious. I think they beat Bro. We'll get to their second matchup later. We get to that, but they beat Bro. And then T1 KT. Pretty obvious T1.
Yep. Yeah, this is a good, feels good for your team that wins week. I guess opening day, I would say. Feels good if you're a Hanwha Life fan or a T1 fan. DPlus versus Nongshim, and then Kiwoom DRX versus the DN Automotive SOOPers.
The Kiwoom DRX matchup is the tough one, right? Like DPlus, I think should clear Nongshim.
Yep. Me too. With that.
I'm kind of leaning DNS, to be honest.
Yeah, me too.
I think they just have the stronger, more robust bottom lane setup, and Rich is Rich, so that's always kind of scary. And just because they got the new name doesn't mean that they're suddenly better. I'm
That'll
gonna
be the
go with
line on the
DNS too.
broadcast, Wolf. If they win, I'll be like, they got the new name and suddenly they got better. Just like Wolf
This
said on
just like
Let's
the
Cover
logo.
Korea.
Just like the logo, the stocks went up.
Going up. KT versus or GenG versus KT, then BNK versus the Bros. The Bros right back up.
Yeah, the bros have a little bit of a chunkier week for them. That's definitely going to be Gen.G BNK. I don't think that Bro can even capitalize on like it's we lost it. We're in trying to figure out our new style right now, and we got tripped up by Bro because we haven't really solidified what we're trying to do. Raptor was an ex-Bro player, so we have him down. No, it's gonna be, that's probably like a 4-0 day. That's a freebie.
Give me the Bros here. I gotta get one
Really?
in. I think this is where the Loki diff can happen, right? Break
I mean,
them through mid.
that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah,
That could happen.
That's the Bropium angle, and I will fully acknowledge it's a Bropium angle. Like I'm going to be the only person voting for Bro here, and the only reason is because we haven't seen Loki. That's the only one. T1 versus Hanwha, and then Kiwoom DRX versus DPlus Kia. Is this where I put my money where my mouth is so early on in the revenge battle?
Yeah, you go for that. I'm gonna say T1 D plus.
Oh yeah, me too. T1 D plus.
This is the thing about Hanwha this week. Like, it's hard to actually really learn anything about Hanwha. If you're like a Hanwha fan and you're like, oh, let's wait and see. You're gonna like, and you're like such a believer. Like, if you're even more of a believer than dGon, you're gonna watch them beat Bro 2-0, and you'll be like, oh yeah, I knew all they needed was a little bit of extra time, and then you're gonna be heartbroken on Saturday. You're gonna be like, oh, Saturday showdown. We did not show up. Oh no.
Yeah, the week for Hanwha is next week. They play DPlus and BNK. Like, those the teams. You can't shoot right back to the top when you finished on the bottom. You've got to prove it first. I believe they'll be able to prove it.
I wonder like what the mentality for Hanwha is if they go like 1-3 after week 2. Like, that could happen. Like, they could beat Bro and then lose to T1 and lose to DPlus, and then ultimately lose that last match at BNK. Like, that could happen. They could end up being 1-3, and then I'll probably be doing a little told you so kind of stuff, but I'm not ready to say that they'll lose to BNK and DPlus yet, because I have my theories. I have my strong theories, right, that we talked about earlier, but I want to see what happens in week 1 before I really start to go, oh yeah, DPlus got this easy. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Sunday, close out the week. Nongshim versus the DN Automotive Supers, and Gen.G versus BNK FearX. That's got 6gamer written all over it to me, man.
Yeah, it really does. I don't trust Snokshim. I just don't. I want to make it clear that I feel very strongly that they are not going to win this matchup. And yet I still believe there's like some BS could be on the table. There could be some wonky ass draft that doesn't make any sense, and maybe a King and pop off could be on the table. He gets
a
Rumble
dandy draft masterclass. That's what's happening here.
I think DNS will be the better team, and at the end we'll be kind of confused. Like, we'll be like, is that true? They won, but I don't know. I'm gonna go DNS on that one. But I definitely feel like some shenanigans are bound to occur.
Yeah. Give me. I will play opposite of you. I think in the chaos there is a chance. So I will. We have 2 separate picks all week here, Wolf. It is my Bro pick against BNK, and then Nongshim here over DNS on Sunday, and then we'll close it out with our Gen.G picks over BNK FearX, where in my predictions they go 0-2 for the week, which means my predictions are probably wrong, but we'll see.
I'm gonna go Gen.G here. It's not impossible for BNK to win, especially if Raptor gets back in form. I mean, he it's funny because he got owned by SkewMond, but also his team was kind of losing everywhere and he didn't have agency, so he looked kind of bad. But Canyon also was the one who got owned by SkewMond. So, you know, which jungler will rise to the occasion here? I don't know. I still give Canyon the edge, but you know, it's a I feel like the junglers are the least interesting part of this in terms of like the strengths. They might be the most important part of this in terms of who bounces back. And if like Canyon is still down in the dumps and Raptor looks great, like maybe that upside could happen, but I'm not ready to predict that.
Be a Diablo team, BNK FearX. Draft for them, play for him, get him what he wants. Separate the red M&Ms, separate whatever he needs to get the win. Like, just that's your best shot. Do it. All right. First official predictions in the book as our preseason preview is now over. Excited to get this one underway. We've got a lot of solid teams in different brackets, and that Hanwha disaster to kick things off just threw a wrench into everything. So can't wait to cover it all here for you as we go through for the next 9 weeks in a row here on Let's Cover Korea. Final thoughts, Wolf?
I am happy to be wrong about Hanwha. I really hope that I'm wrong about Hanwha. I just want to make it clear that, like, even though I think this is a disaster, or this will be a very expensive disaster for them, as we've talked about already countless times, because this org has invested so much and has, like, went from that chorus, you know, abomination of a roster to like spending money and actually trying to compete. And that's like what we should champion when you have a huge sponsor and a huge owner group like Hanwha in the LCK is that investment. Like I want to see teams that invest a lot of money find success. And like it's a tragedy that they might not. So I really also think that when I look at this roster and like what Guma's been through, obviously picking up the World's Finals MVP, and then coming here and then just, you know, having to deal with all the pressure that he's already dealt with after last year with Smash. Like, I wish him the best. And I hope you're right, dGon. I'm not going to expect it, but I hope you're right.
Well, we're definitely going to be around, and it's going to be a great season. So for everyone watching, thank you so much for keeping us honest on calling GenG the greatest team ever to grace the earth and blah, blah, blah. And then they'd fall over at first stand. We'll see how they do and everyone else does next week. And we'll have you covered here on Let's Cover Korea. If you haven't already, like and subscribe here on Last Free Nation. Until then, bye-bye.